All right, next up we have Etienne Pelletier. He's a data virtualization expert at Denodo. His topic is around enabling reliable agentic AI through unified data and business context. Clear? Thanks, Etienne.
Happy to be here. Kind of switching gears, we just talked about AI in the context of content documents. Now think about use cases where you need actual hard data. We're data people in the room, so we like to work with data. Doing AI on data is way more challenging. Not way more, but it's a different set of challenges. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So before we get into data, I'll start with something very controversial. I'm not a big fan of supermarket flyers. Now, they might be more impactful if somehow someone knew that I have 3 boys. Don't sell me gluten stuff. We don't have that at home. I love blueberries, right? So I think it would be amazing if those flyers could be tailored to my specific needs. What we don't know, though, is that it's very complex to just do those paper flyers. It's, in fact, 8 weeks of work for 15 people. Every week, they just do that work to generate that flyer that we just take and put in the recycle bin. The good news, though, is someone is changing that. I know I have friends in the industry. They're working on making the flyers even more tailored to specific individuals, neighborhoods, all of that. And they want to cut down the production process to 2 weeks and just 3 people. How are they going to make that possible? It's by using Agentic AI. And that's what we'll be discussing today. So we just talked about chatbots. What's the difference between a chatbot and an Agentic AI? Maybe you're familiar with this, maybe you're not. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So keep in mind, I'm talking about chatbots in the context of data. So chatbots can be seen as productivity tools. They help you do your work better. And in the context of let's say, Power BI users, see chatbots as an extension of Power BI, but in a way to generate reports or give answers that are super agile, super flexible. You don't need to wait 3 weeks for your data team to give you a new Power BI report. And for non-technical users or people like my mom, as an example, that don't even know how to use Power BI, chatbots can be super powerful because then it could give these people a data experience. You just ask a question, you get some data answers back. I'm not getting into hallucination risk and the trust issue and all of that. It's a separate conversation. The point, though, is chatbots are made to answer questions, to do simple tasks. But what if you want to automate, a flyer creation process? What if you want to ask super complex questions? That's where Agentic AI comes in. So, for operation people, it can be seen as a way to automate work. Tasks that are manual, that are, maybe boring, can be automated using Agentic AI. I'll explain how they work in just a few slides. But, from a day-to-day perspective, Agentic AI can be seen as a mechanism to do automations, yes, but also do workflows of tasks, to automate that work. So I wanted to set that distinction, right? So chatbot, simple task, productivity, Agentic is really meant to do some tasks, take decisions. So now you might be thinking, okay, and this is great, but we don't work, I don't work in retail, I work for a public organization. Then what if you work for Mark, as an example, right? So this guy has complex questions. And what we're seeing, the trend that we're seeing now is, yes, chatbots are evolving and technology is moving, but the reality is people are asking more and more complex questions. How do you address that? Maybe not to the level of Mark Carney's level of questions, but that's the idea behind Agentic AI. So if Mark asked this question about, GDP growth and looking at default, multi-factor complex elements, it's really hard to generate an answer for this. There's no single Power BI report that answers that question, obviously. And then what if he turns around and say, oh, by the way, but what if we do this and the tariff increased by another 10%? And it's going to take weeks to dig into all the silos behind this question, right? You need data from provincial governments, from external affairs. It is complex, and I think you see where I'm going with this is how can you automate the searching, the generation of that report for Mark is something that can be done on a day-to-day basis, or that will be done. So this is an example of a very complex question, but the truth is that there's I was about to say a million, maybe not a million, but there are a lot of use cases in public organizations where agentic AI applies. I did just basic research. I found examples. I think we talked about grant this morning, so working on applications as an example, simplifying immigration processes, automating procurement processes. There's a lot of places in everyone in this room's work where agentic AI could make a huge difference in just making things simpler and faster. That's the beauty of it. We're at the beginning of something very different. You think that, oh, I work for the government, this is never going to happen, before the next 20 years. Well, the truth is, at least at the federal government, I don't know in Ontario or in other province governments, but there are already guidelines in how to work with automated decision systems, right? So to guide people that want to do exploration and hopefully get in production at some point. And the federal government is investing in a local AI company called Cohere. It's just one example, obviously, but the goal is to build a Canadian large language model so that we're not dependent on OpenAI or other vendors from the US, as an example, or China, so that we can work with more confidential information. So there's a real strategy, there's an urgency for the government to adopt more agentic AI-based workflows and technologies. So things are changing as we speak. I see it on the day-to-day in my work, but it will happen in the near future also in your work, most likely. So BI is not going to disappear. A lot of people in the room work in Power BI and Tableau, do BI reports. It's just that instead of doing dashboards, it will be autonomous decision systems. The dashboard will actually take the decision. And it's not about looking at data on a map or on a nice graphic and then thinking what the decision could be or should be. Instead, your dashboard will say, well, just let me handle the decision and I'll make it happen. So our role as data people, I was about to say will change, but is actually changing right now. Is instead of building dashboards and reports, we need to be curators of data. We need to train other people on how to use more data and also help build these decision systems so that they can do what's expected from them, basically. So a lot of things are reshaping, like this year. So how does it work, an agentic AI workflow? Think of it as different agents collaborating together. So in the concept, I'll stick with my flyer example because it's a use case everybody understands, obviously. But you have a sales intelligence person who needs to know, okay, what product maybe will be put on sold, on discount. And then you have maybe some people in charge of store performance, right? Understanding what store need to meet what revenue expectations, how promotion should be done, what's the theme, is it back to school, is it Halloween or Christmas? So these are chatbots, but more than chatbots, specialize in each their individual task, combine into a workflow, sharing data to come up to a task. And within each of these steps, you have sub-steps where you can specify what needs to be done and what's expected. I don't know if you noticed, but there's no SQL, no Python, no Java code here. It's all natural language. That's what makes it so powerful. Non-technical people can make this real, but also it's super easy to change the question. So if Mark turns around and asks a slightly different version of his long question, You just go there, adjust the text, and change the expectations, and rerun your process, and that's it. So it's another way of working with the data that we haven't, started to explore that much. So all these agents, they're coordinated by a central agent, the kind of workflow master agent that orchestrates the work of all the other agents. And that agent is in charge of interacting with a human who owns the task, as an example. So it's not easy to be a coordinator agent. I ask a complex question. I know it will generate work for a lot of under-level agents, and all that work needs to be coordinated by the central agent. So we're data people. We like data. What do you think the data is needed to generate this kind of flyer here, right? So you have master data, obviously. You have buying patterns of people if they want to know what I buy or don't buy, obviously. Store performance that is going to be needed to decide what goes in discount in a specific store. And then, obviously, images, legal material, and what if you wanted to have like a discount because there's this amazing hockey game tonight between Montreal and Toronto, right? So you want to have real-time information needed if, obviously, it's possible to send that discount, that flyer to each people in a neighborhood, as an example. So it is very challenging to aggregate all these data sources. And this is just looking at it from a 100-feet perspective, right? But the reality is that technology changes, your data sources will change. We're always doing a migration to Azure or another data lake, data quality. Also, the requirements are moving faster than you build the reports traditionally. So how do you handle that? We work in a bilingual country, but even more languages are needed now. So there's a lot of things that have to be taken into account as you build those workflows, and it's really challenging. That's the point, right? Not talking about privacy management, and privacy regulation that's coming up now. So a lot of things that have to be considered and put into account. And I like the previous Chancellorman slide, at some point where you talked about challenges and solutions, right? Because you kind of covered many of the things that are there. These are real-life problems. One other example of something which is not in that slide, which is super important, is the concept of data needs to make sense to people, but also to agents. That's a semantic layer. You might be familiar with a semantic layer, so you work in Power BI, you create some logic, some analysis. So imagine if you share data, like just the raw data from the databases, to your end users. There's not much they can do with it, right? But if you take the same data and create that semantic layer where you combine sources, you put descriptions, you put tags, you rename columns and tables, right? And then suddenly it all makes sense for people and they can work with data they understand. But guess what? It's the same thing with AI, so with chatbots and with agentic AI. So I found a study from Cornell University. It's nice because they measured the quality of the response if you train and use your AI on the raw data model versus on a semantic layer. And you kind of triple the accuracy of the answers. Do not underestimate the importance of the semantic layer. It's really, really important, specifically in the context of AI. So now that we understand the key challenges, right? So how does it work? How do you build an agentic AI workflow? So the endpoint, the channel, is what humans will interact with. It could be in Teams. It can be on a website, on a support website. It can be in Slack. It can be in WhatsApp. Doesn't really matter, right? There's a ton of technologies in the market that make it possible to expose. It could look like a chatbot, but in the end, it's an agentic AI workflow that will go and reach and connect with multiple agents, right? So that workflow is then put together using different technologies. So the screenshots I had are from Crew AI, but there are many technologies from Microsoft, from all the players to create those workflows, and those workflows will then speak with Gen AI and large language models. So image generators and chatbots to obviously understand natural language, translate that into SQL or other code to get the answers that you need to generate this flyer or do whatever task that you need to do. And then all of that needs data, as we saw earlier. So these data sources we mentioned, these data silos that are never going to be moved into one central lake. That's a point, actually, that I need to maybe insist on, is this approach of moving everything in a data lake used to work when you had pre-built reports. You knew the data you needed to answer a question. So you needed to build your warehouse or bring data in your lake, and then you could run your report on top of that. But in the world of AI, you don't know the data that you need before someone asks for it, and they expect an answer right now. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to put all the world's data in one data lake. It's not working like that. You need agility. You need to be able to connect to all these sources in a logical manner. So the gap between the sources and the workflow engine is that data access platform, the data access layer, that makes it possible to connect to all these sources in real time. You need real-time data. And then to join these sources, right? So the workflow engine is not a database engine, and then you have Snowflake as one source, but then not everything is in Snowflake or in Fabric, right? So how do you join, you combine, you make sense of those questions you just got, right? So Mark's question needs to join and group and analyze like multiple data sources. There's no pre-built report. You need a place to create your semantic layer, obviously, if you want your AI to be able to work with it. And last but not least, enforce privacy policies, which is nice because privacy policies are usually well-defined in the data sources. You have or don't have access to views or tables or databases. So those can be surfaced in your AI login, in your credentials, but you still need a place to enforce those privacy policies. So I did some research, and oh, what a surprise. There's just one technology right now that does it, and it pure chance happens to be the company I work for. I'm not biased. But the point is that, honestly, right, I know Microsoft is getting there, which is great because it demonstrates that there's a real need for that data access layer, right? So, but the point is, we need this logical data management platform or capability to be able to connect with these sources and to extract the data in real time and combine those data sources, right? And that's what we do at Denodo, by the way. So it's one of the use cases. So we just actually released a book 2 weeks ago on the rise of, called The Rise of Logical Data Management. It's not new. I mean, it's been there for 25 years. We have customers in all countries, public organizations, private, all industries. We can talk about that later. But the point is that AI data is not the same as Power BI data. Semantics, real-time, multi-source, speed, agility, it's different. So we need to put ourselves in a different mindset. So if you'd like to learn more, what we do at Denodo is actually much broader than the semantic layer, in a sense that, than just agentic AI readiness, yes. But if you need a data marketplace, if you want to combine multiple data sources from the cloud, on-premise, legacy, create that semantic layer to be ready for your future AI project. These are all kind of use cases that our customers use the platform for. And so that's what I wanted to share with you guys today, right? So agentic AI, it's there. It's coming faster than we think. I was the first to be surprised a few months ago on how a lot of projects are popping up here and there. So now's the time to be ready. And now's the time to future-proof your data. Semantic layer is the first thing. Making it accessible in an agile manner is next. And the last point is more for us in the room, is think about your role in this overall process. If you're just building Power BI reports, now's the time to start thinking about how you could train an AI to build those reports, as an example. The skills are still needed. It's just a different way of applying them in this whole data, perspective. So with that said, thank you very much. If you have some questions now, or please come see us at the booth, and I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Any questions for Etienne? Yes? You go ahead. Just a mic here. Thank you.
So just a question on agentic AI.
Yep.
It's always learning, it's always evolving in real time. So how do you make sure that it doesn't learn and evolve from bad data or mistakes or start making decisions incorrectly? Does it need constant monitoring or some sort of controls?
That's a very large question, multiple sub-questions. So there's a difference first between the training of your LLMs, as an example. So most LLMs are trained on the internet, and then you extend their knowledge with internal data. So it's one thing. But when you're in the context of an agentic AI, you're not in training mode, you're in execution mode. So they'll go and get the data that's needed. So that's the part we want to focus on. The companies that will train the large language models, that would be separate, I would say. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but you need to, again, we could take each of your questions separately, but the training is one part. The use of your data and respecting privacy and everything is one thing, and then ensuring it's trained or it's using the right data really depends on the quality of your data. So again, that's a separate problem, how you handle that. Thank you.
Thanks. Just right here.
In one of your earlier slides, you had like an example of like a CEO, like a chief operations officer, driving operational efficiency and by using an agentic AI that would trigger corrective actions without a human intervention.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Oh, so I think in your earlier slides, you had like this use case where
The CEO, yeah.
a CEO was using like agentic AI to drive operational efficiencies
Yes.
and driving corrective actions without human intervention. Every time in government I hear without human intervention, it just triggers like a scary situation. So like what would be a safe use case or an example of that, which...
So
yeah.
right now, nobody's saying you should run our company, right? That's not the idea. It's more about delegating it to specific, concise tasks. Those could be about writing Power BI reports or other kind of automation. It's really like robots today. So robots will have a dedicated task, and you can orchestrate that into something a bit more wide, I would say, in a workflow of tasks. How you prevent your AI from taking decision it's not supposed to take is really how you're going to train it. And actually, it comes down also to the description, the semantics that you put in each of the steps describing what's expected from the agent. But the agent won't go below what you allow it to do. So I know we see science fiction movies and Terminator and everything, but the reality is that you have a very confined algorithm or workflow, and it will work in the context of the data it has access to. I'm not talking about necessarily driving cars or anything at this stage. It's more in the context of data management, working with data. So you just give it some task, and it will generate that. But obviously, it's like anything else. It needs training. It could be subject to hallucination. So a lot of preparation is needed to make sure it does the job well. But it won't go rogue like it did in Terminator, as an example, because it's really the scope you give it that defines what it can do. It's really on the prompt engineering at that level, I would say. And very honestly, I'm not an expert at that level on safeguards, on rail guards for AI. But from the experiences that we've done, is the more you document, the more it will know what needs to be done or not done. That's really hard. And it's not that simple. I've pulled the few hairs I still have trying to make it some AI works. But once you get it working, usually it's pretty stable. So yeah, I don't have an easy answer for you, unfortunately, on what steps need to be put in place to safeguard your processes. It's really about just giving it the right guidelines.
Cool. Thanks. We just have one question in the back. Go ahead.
Hi, great presentation, thank you. So I was curious, you mentioned that Canada's need of like having their own proprietary model, like Cohere or something like that. I was curious that the cost for creating a foundational model is so high at this stage, but there are so many open source models. Why not fine tune it? Because we can host these models
Ask
locally.
the Canadian government. It's a fair point. I mean, now we're seeing the economic model of large language models kind of falling apart, billions being invested versus hundreds of millions in return. I guess it's a political decision, but that's above my paycheck. So it's a super good point, though.
But you're not considering for operations of these, just fine tuning open source models.
Well, in our case, the Agentic AI workflow will use whatever model you give it. So I mentioned Cohere just to say that it's happening right now, but it's one model. You could use ChatGPT, you can use DeepSeek, whatever you want, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll just do 2 more questions on this, and then there's just one on this side. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sort of envisioning the world where we have a semantic platform for the semantic data layer. Just coming back to the basics of that, what kind of role-based access decisions need to be taken by whoever builds this platform? Or does it not even matter? Anyone can be presented with anything because the questions are being asked within the guardrails and no personal information is being delivered. So there's no need for role-based access?
No, well, so from our experience, the credentials are needed when you connect to your AI tool, like connecting to your LDAP and TriID. So based on your roles and privileges, the data access platform will enforce those privileges on the backend data. So if you do things properly, you will never see data that you're not supposed to see. Does that answer? And even beyond that, right, if data needs to be masked dynamically or encrypted or anonymized, it will be done at the query time. But the chatbots, this idea of I ask a question, I could be presented with any answer is not really true when you have this security model in place. So at least at Denodo, that's by default. As soon as you interact with the backend data, your information, your privileges are needed before any processing is done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi there. Great presentation, by the way. So having worked with Agentic AI, I have question like, especially the pace at which AI is moving, the LLM models, they are developing so fast. For example, initially used Llama, it used to use so much computational power, and then came in Gemma 3 and things like that. So it's really hard to plan a project basically based upon...
Explain me how, what?
So it's very hard to plan a project based upon requirement in terms of compute and etc., especially with the open source models. So any input on this, how to counter this?
I'm sorry, so to counter the challenge on the
planning
performance?
phase, because the compute necessity for a LLM model is different now, and the capacity of each model, because let's say I'm using Llama 3, which has old training model, while Gemma 3 is quicker and
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that. The impact of the models that you choose in the performance and in the processing requirements needed. That's outside of our scope. We focus on accessing the data, but how that data is then consumed by the LLM, I guess that would be when we work with companies, they all have this corporate AI team in charge of the overall framework. So whether it's with Copilot, ChatGPT, something else, right? And they would be the people in charge of defining how to optimize performance, reduce costs and everything within that agentic AI workflow. So if you're interested, we can discuss that after, and I can do some research. But it's kind of separate, within our scope. We use an LLM also to understand the question and query the data. That's contained, we use, but we will use the model that you decide to use. So it hasn't been a problem so far. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Etienne. Right, so we're all good. Maybe you could bug him after. All right. Oh, we're going for.
I just want to answer that question, if that's okay.
Yeah, quickly.
Thank you.
Hi. So yeah, I think in terms of large language models, I think the future is going to be small language models where it's designed for a specific AI agent, so that the compute is lesser, and you can have faster processing speed and inference as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Small language models.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
It's going to be the future.
That's true,
Thank
the
you.
small models. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so we do have lunch now. Lunch runs until 1:45 p.m. It's next door. So there's 2 tracks, just as a reminder, a tactical and a strategic track. The technical track is in this room with me. You can check the agenda to figure out which is which, but I'll give you a preview. The technical track in here is called AI in Regulatory Decision Making. And the strategic track is called Modernizing Legacy Systems. Right, if you have any questions, just let me know and I can help you guys find the room too. All right, enjoy lunch. 1:45 p.m. is when we regroup.